Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And I'm here with my good friend and co-founder, Nicholas Buggs. And of course, our esteemed guest is with us, Jordan Charles. Jordan, Nick, say hello.
You first, Nick.
There we go. Look at, look at that, man. We got a guest who has some manners. I love it. He was like, look, I'll step back, and let Nick go. I appreciate you for that, man. But it's great to be here, Chris and Jordan. It's just awesome to have another filmmaker on here with us, chopping it up and chatting. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. No, I appreciate it, Nick. Chris, thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to having a good chat with you guys today. So thank you.
It's our pleasure. Likewise, I do want to just say, I don't know how many episodes we'll publish before this one actually publishes, but on I think one that was 2 episodes ago, I've been thinking about it ever since, Nick. I was like, because it just came out. Have you ever said anything, Jordan, where it comes out of your mouth and to you said it the right way. You communicated the feeling and meaning of the words that were coming out of your mouth, but to everyone else, it meant something else.
Yeah, right.
It's the worst. So the worst thing in the world is just to be misunderstood in general, right? Like it's very frustrating. We live and die on these things as artists. Like, please understand me.
So I got a Chris Tucker feel right now, man. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Yes, exactly. So a couple of weeks ago, I was like, nobody takes us too seriously, and I'm like, and you were like, Nick, no. We, and I'm like, yeah, I know for indie film, like you can follow us. We've done 3 feature films, are on worldwide distribution, a bunch of short films. We did all these consults, script reads, etc. We have a lot of experience doing this. Yes, you can take us seriously. I literally did mean like just the fact that it's a podcast and there are moments where we are just shooting the shit and it's not really like the end of the world. It's not the Trinity test in Oppenheimer, right?
Oh, man.
Like that's what I meant to say, but I think it came off as, hey, we're a bunch of clowns, and so
right.
you shouldn't be like tuning into this podcast anyway. So just for those out there listening, yes. Speaking of
Yes,
the situation, listen, you can take us seriously on film stuff, but we also aim to entertain you. And therefore, there are moments that are sort of less serious, less intense, less demanding of your intellect. And that's what I meant by that. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Oh, I appreciate you, man. You said less serious, and I'm sitting here thinking about my my Joker Lego over my shoulder up there.
I love
right?
that Lego.
It's like, why so serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've found about that, Nick, about your background is that most people don't know it's Legos.
Yeah, no, dude.
That surprised me, but yeah.
See, look, Jordan's over here like, what?
No, because you're right. Some are like really inspired. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, dude. Like this is all just Legos, man. I go to the Lego store and get all the individual pieces and just make up my own designs based off of maybe what the kids want or what I'm interested in making. So no sets, man. This is all about Lego master building over here.
Love it.
It's true. And I think that's the other thing, Nick, is people assume that you bought a set. It's no. He just bought a bunch of blank canvases and like took a picture and made it into a Lego. So
that's right. I Legofied it.
Yeah. I find it to be the most original podcast backdrop in podcasting.
Oh, dude, I appreciate you for that.
I don't think anybody has it, and certainly won't have it in this variety, because by looking at that wall, you kind of get a sense of like what you're into.
You got it.
Like your whole life. You're like, oh, this is a man child.
Yes. Like, aren't we all? Aren't we all? I am just in tune with it. That's the key. Yeah. I'm in tune with it. So yeah, I'm all about it. It's like put the life out there on the wall in Legos and just have fun with it. And it's also one of these things that's like kind of a callback to what we always say, which is filmmakers are people too.
That's right.
And why is that important? Because we're not just filmmakers, right? We do other stuff.
Yes.
Right. We do Legos. We make music. We're scientists. We're activists. Right. We can do all the
Shout
things.
out to Alexi Gambis.
There you go. Alexi
Scientist,
Gambis.
filmmaker.
That's right. So we can be all of these things, and we should not be afraid to share that with the world. And I know that, Jordan, that's kind of right up your alley. I just said activist, right? Like you do other stuff. You have other interests. And, we try to provide a platform for people to share that.
Yeah. So why don't you break it all down? Like let's do the actual official introduction here. So Jordan, take it away.
Jeez, I was getting so into the Lego thing though now. Like it was just it was great.
Like, don't get me started, man. I could keep going. So it's all on you now, man. It's all you.
Hi everyone. Jordan Charles. I'm actually here with the two of you, I guess, to promote our current project, Brothers in Arms. It's a project we're super proud of. We're taking the short film to feature film financing and development routes. So I'm just happy to, I guess, create awareness for the project. So I appreciate you guys doing this.
No, it's awesome. Our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So to just hop back in on what Nick was just alluding to and it brought up, you're an actor activist. That's an interesting title, not one we get often. When did you become an actor activist instead of an actor only? And what is the core of your activism?
Oh, that's a great question. It's interesting. I don't know why. So my parents were, they were immigrants from Italy after World War II. And the upbringing, I mean, we all have disparate heritages and all these things. And there was a lot of division in our family. But the one constant was, I mean, Italian Catholic, it's food, family, church, and probably slaps upside the cheek if you don't follow the background of participating in those three things. My dad was very passionate about gardening and the environment and how we're not doing a good job as stewards of the planet. And I grew up with a lot of acculturation of that type, and I care about a lot of different things. I mean, I think we're all activists in our own right? Like some are just gaining a higher profile for things like that. But I think it started a lot at home, which it does, I think, for most people. And I just really want to use art to help promote either projects or platforms that, whether through the art or otherwise, through yourself as an artist, that, can leave the planet in a better place than the way we find it, right? I'm sure you guys believe in these things as well.
Yeah, I think so. Like there's a ton of stuff that I think we can do, individually to make the planet better. And I think we all sort of intuitively know when we're doing something that's terrible, just in general, and when we're doing something that's very helpful. I'm sure there are obvious exceptions to that where you could say, oh, I thought I was doing something really positive, and then you didn't have the science, and I hate that phrase, the science, but you didn't have the information, you didn't have the knowledge and the experience to know that you were doing, something that was harmful. But in general, I think we know that it's as small of a thing as like not driving a gas car is great.
Right.
As little as pulling back on red meat or meat in general is. And so I'm not saying, listen, I'm the first person to tell a vegan person you're not a revolutionary, right? Like
to their face, right?
To their face,
right? Yeah.
Well, I'm a slightly large person, so yeah, I have no problem with face-to-face confrontations.
But Chris walks up in Whole Foods, starts slapping people, like
yeah. I'm like, well, look, and I have some in my family. I love them to death, and I think they're doing the right thing. I'm simply saying, you made a dietary choice. And that's awesome. And it's the right dietary choice. And you're doing the right thing, because I think people do, maybe not today, but 5 years ago would have been surprised to know that really industrialized farming is the biggest cause of global warming, even more than cars in India, but in factories. And so just pull back on, there are these little things we can all do that where you don't have to my point, be a revolutionary. But that's activism, right?
I agree.
So, yeah, that's all. And Nick, do you have any examples of your own activism?
Yeah, man.
I'm curious about this.
You're looking at one right now. It's called This Podcast.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying, dude? Like, why don't we do this?
That's interesting. I didn't view our podcast as an activist podcast per
man,
se.
100%.
But I guess we're activists for filmmakers. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, you know, there's a little, I don't know. I got a question for Jordan in a second, but I'll say this. One of the reasons as to why we started this podcast was because of some early experiences that we had in filmmaking. And you could say there were some mistakes that were made, or there were some things that happened just in either making films or distributing films. And we were like, look, man, we got to let people know what's up, right? We have to get out there and just get the megaphone, which is the podcast, and tell people, hey, avoid this, look out for that, try to be this, don't do that, right? Like, come over here on our podcast and do an episode that we call Mistakes in the Making, where we tell people to come on and just talk about a mistake that you made, a lesson that you learned, so that people can avoid those mistakes going forward, right? Activism is just about having a cause and then bringing people in to that cause and educating them as to why they need to be a part of it. That's what we do on the podcast. So I have a little thing that I wanted to ask you, Jordan. There was a little film that you did back in 2016.
Okay.
At least it was produced distributed in 2016. Railway Spine.
Yes.
Were you at all involved in the distribution of that film at the time, or were you just featuring as an actor in that film?
Yeah, so I came aboard a bit late on that project through a mutual call. That's Samuel Gonzalez's film. He's actually a military veteran turned director. He's a very talented guy, really good guy. I actually came on board as an actor. I had a supporting role in that, but I was not involved after the release and distribution. I did attend some of the events when it was making the film festival rounds. I remember going to San Diego and I think a few other places, but why do you ask?
Well, Chris, without saying any names at the moment, we just happened to have a film, two films that were actually in the process of being distributed by the same distributor that Railway Spine had at the time, back in the 2016 to 2018 timeframe. So it's very interesting because that's a 6 degrees of separation type deal. I'm like, oh, wow. Jordan Charles and we had the same distributor for our films around that time. And since you weren't necessarily privy to a lot of the distribution stuff, let's just say that those were some of the lessons that we learned that prompted us to start this podcast.
You know, it's funny when you say, you hear all these anecdotal stories, or I mean, in your case, suggestions, like the business side of making art is so different than the creative side. And you have to you got to really roll with the punches on both sides. But I mean, that's just a completely different. I find, God bless them, people on the distribution side of the industry, I mean, they have their own passions as well, but I sometimes find that their lens or their vantage point, that their angling is often very different than a lot of the creative sides that have arrived prior to you reaching that point. It's just very interesting to me.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. And Chris, I know that you've got, some talk tracks on that as well, because that is, again, one of the reasons why we got into this is because you have to either really understand both sides or bring people into your team who understand and respect both sides. Like, if you want to make money with your art, then you have to respect the business, period. You can't go in just as an artist. You can't go blind to that. And I think that's one of the things that I know Chris and I encountered. I think we were the ones really advocating for the business side of things and contracts and watching out for certain things and marketing and who do you connect yourself with. And whereas some of the filmmakers were so focused on the art that they did become blind to what was happening in that business space.
Yeah, let me touch on something. I'll piggyback on that because I think you're heading it right on this. I realize one of the inceptions of us even doing this film, I'm sure you guys have gone through similar journeys on your, projects, whether in the beginning or in the middle, but you get a little bit frustrated perhaps, and I don't even know if that's right, maybe even impatient, where you really have a voice and you want to really get your art out, your narrative, you have a viewpoint, something that you want to share with others, an audience. And then for whatever reason, people are not aligned with your viewpoint, or they're like, I just don't see this as palpable as you do. And then, but you're like, no, you got to stick to your convictions, and you got to get your project out there. You want to allow that voice to be heard. But all of the things that come up on the business side to be able to like develop a project and then shoot it and then get it out there so that eyes get on it, I would actually argue there are so many talented people that are, in filmmaking circles all over the place, either domestic or international. But it's really the business side and your acuity in that, I think, that actually gets you further. Because there's so many people that have got inventive ideas, and they can, articulate themselves through expression and all these wonderful things. Their imaginations are just boundless. But it's actually like, how are you going to navigate production? How are you going to learn how to go through the pitfalls of hiring, or even perhaps even removing people? Or how are you going to deal with scheduling difficulties? Then how do you herald the project as a commodity for it to be picked up by others that can see a return on investment? Those are the hard things that I don't think you're ever taught as an artist. And those are the ones I think that propel you further. Most people can create, but I think most artists don't understand what it takes on the business side. I'm constantly learning as well. Like, I think we're all in that position.
Yep, you're spot on.
Yeah, and the business changes all the time. At least the business side changes all the time as people move in and out of public service seats, right? So tax incentives, state to state, country to country, can change over time and ebb and flow. And so you always need to know where the latest or newest opportunity is. And having an incredible accountant that's in industry is one of the little pieces of secret sauce that will really help you along the way if you're a producer. We do have a podcast episode. I think it's called the A to Z of film investment. You can get that on the audio side or on our YouTube channel. I think it's the only podcast of its kind where we basically take almost 2 hours, I think, and just go through all these little sort of vignettes of scenarios you run into when you're trying to A, be an investor in a film, or B, trying to be a producer that's getting investment in a film. Awesome. So I highly recommend people going back in the library. I don't know of any other episode that speaks to the person with the purse and speaks to the person that's trying to get the money as well. There are some podcasts that speak to financing, obviously, and how to raise it. But I don't know if there's any podcast that try to prepare the executive producer for what they're going to see on the creative side and from the producer, and the things the producer is going to tell you to try to get you to invest in the movie and what to look out for. That doesn't exist outside of this podcast. So I would tell everybody to go find that. And so with that being said, it is interesting because there is a bit of a chasm in terms of the temperament, experience, and value each side brings. It is always helpful, I should say, for a creative to up their business game and understand that side as much as possible. But what isn't said as much as I think it's advantageous for the EP, the person that's going to sort of finance the movie, if it's a true indie, to know creative ever more, like get ever more creative, know what every person on set does, at least enough to be dangerous, at least enough to know if someone's burning your cash on set, right? Like there's so many EPs that are just investing in movies as a way to diversify their portfolio or a way to show loss of income at tax season. Those are, by the way, both really good pitches to a high net worth individual. like those are things that high net worth individuals are thinking about annually. But there are some people who really want to be wowed by a piece of creative, or want to be in bed with the team that does creative. And I say in bed because once you make a movie, you're married to it for life, whether you like it or not. So I think as an EP with the money, you have to try to your best to bring out the creative and the love you have for the art form so that you can make sort of better, wiser investments. Because on their own, the creative and the business person, they're different people, like completely different people. I feel like a filmmaker will make a film with his team and at the end of it say, no matter what, we made this beautiful film together. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, Jordan. Like, it's all good. We didn't make, any money on this, but we made this beautiful film together. And then the business side of that doesn't think like that at all. Like they don't think they don't understand, oh, why did you make this decision? Why didn't you go into this market or try to find this placement or make this phone call? Or why is the accounting so bad? Or like whatever. So they're thinking strictly on dollars and cents and like business decisions and why they were made and not made. So the closer both sides can get to each other, the better chance you have to have a successful film all the way around.
Yeah, and I got a question for you, Jordan, from your experience. Like, so Chris talked about it's best if the creative can have that sense, right? Some of that business sense and that business acumen. And I mean, that's obviously true, but that's probably not going to be the reality. They're just not going to do it, right? Because the creative, the true creatives, that's what they want to do. They want to create. That's it. They want someone else to deal with that other stuff. Because then if they focus on the business, it takes them away from the creative. So from your experience, have you found that there has been that kind of balance? Because ultimately you would think that, like Chris mentioned, you could have the benefit of an executive producer who has some connections, has some business acumen, and you'll also have a producer who's focused on those things, while maybe the director or the writer, other folks are focused on the creative. Have you seen that there's balance at all? Or is it more like everybody's a creative and just barely scratching the surface on the business side?
Yeah. So, it's great. And kudos to you guys too, because I think you're right. I mean, my mind initially when I made that comment was that, the artists sometimes struggle with this business side, but you're also right. It has to work in the inverse too, because as they say, the suits, like you got to make sure that they're also spirited towards like what you're trying to make, because even though it is a commodity, the financing has to get behind the project too, in terms of what its motives are, its ambitions and everything else. But to answer your question, Nick, so I lived in Honolulu for a while. I was acting in independent films and doing a few other pursuits there. But Cameron Crowe came there to film Aloha, and I had a bit part in that. And that film sadly it got caught up in a lot of the Sony hack incident, and there were a lot of things there. And that's when I believe Amy Pascal was running Sony Studios at that time. And Cameron's such a gracious director. He's a very, very good human being, in my opinion. And I can tell, like at that time, Sony, I think the stereotype in the industry was that that's one of the studio heads that actually really cared about film, like what are we going to make and what are we going to be represented by, versus like, do the dollars make sense, or like is the cost sheet going to make sense in terms of the overall investment return? So I've been part of that project in no way, shape, or form where I was like leading the effort as an actor, and then vis-a-vis that, compared to like some of the independent projects that I've been on, either as an actor or producer, I find the homegrown, the grassroots stuff in independent filmmaking, I actually find that it's more, I don't know, people's their goals or agendas are more congruent, because I think that you're making films perhaps for different reasons. I mean, everyone wants to make something where, it gets exposure and the audience takes a positive reception from it. And then like, kind of like what you were saying, Chris, too, like, hey, we made it, good job, it's awesome. But I actually think on the independent side, I mean, you're really more exploring character, and the conflicts have so much more depth, in my opinion, for the most part. That's not always the case. I mean, studio films, they can carry a lot of depth as well, and they're very hard to make because of the dollars involved and the scale. But I actually find that the heart for the cinema, I still think it beats loudest on the independent filmmaking landscape. I really believe that. I don't know if you guys have found that as well. I mean, you guys are
Dude, I'm with you.
in your own right.
You know that I'm 100% there, and Chris knows, especially because Chris will ask about one of the blockbuster films of the day, and he'll ask like, Nick, what'd you think of it? And I'm like, I didn't see it. You know, like he's like, well, okay, seriously, you didn't see it? I'm like, yeah, but I watched 13 short films, right? And from all these people from across the world, and they were awesome, and I was crying, and they moved me, and the depth of character or the animation or whatever it was, like all of that stuff moves me so much more. Now, are there studio films that can move me as well? Chris, I finally watched Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was at breakfast this morning. Doing script review with producer Joe for the movie he's shooting today. And the table across from us, I'm all up in their Kool-Aid because one of the people said at the other table said, you have to see Anatomy of a Fall. And I'm like,
Right.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
I
Yeah.
really turned to them and they're like, what? And I was like, sorry, I don't mean to be listening to eavesdrop. I just heard you say that out loud. And I'm like, absolutely. And,
but Chris, I'm going to share this with both of you real quick on Anatomy of a Fall. Now, had I been up on my French like I probably should be, but I'm not.
I thought you knew French.
I do, but I'm not as up on it as I should be. Yeah. Had I been on top of my French,
said you're this great legendary thing, and yet
I could have. I'll do it like this, quote unquote, watched the entire film blindfolded, because, and think about this, you did not need to see that film if you knew the language to be able to enjoy it. To me, I don't know that I've ever related to a film in that way ever in my life, because the dialogue carries it, the sound design carries it, everything is in the speaking, right? Everything is there.
I'll push back on you in one way. I'll push back on you in one way. I think the performance, and I wish I had her name right in front of me. I had it written down on one of these pads, but this would be a great time for producer Papa Bear, producer Joe to be here and like throw this in the chat so I would look like a genius. But the lead actress, the pro tag on this, you want to watch it for her.
Oh, no.
You could watch it blindfolded. I know what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of pleasure in watching this performance. The young child's performance. And,
I agree.
I never knew his name,
agree.
But,
I'm just telling you, I have never walked away from I'm just saying that. I've never walked away from a film and reflected back and said, I could have just listened to this entire thing, not seen a thing, and fully enjoyed the film just as it was. Never in my life. Right. So anyway, I digress. So, but there are these studio films that can do that, but I agree with you wholeheartedly that I do find the heart of film to be in independent cinema. And I think that's why I seek it out. And I think that's why we have this podcast, because I think sometimes I feel like independent filmmakers don't want to be independent filmmakers, and they focus so much on what's happening in Hollywood and studio that they sometimes forget that they can be successful as independent filmmakers. There are people like us out here who want to see your stuff, man. Like I will pay for it. I'm not going to have to, I won't have to just get it for free. I will pay for it. And I think there's an opportunity there.
A few things before we get into our latest edition of Things We Should Know. So to your point, Jordan, this year is the year that I think, and there's been a few years actually of late, if you think about, Parasite and Nomadland and a few of these movies who have really been quite successful at award season time, this year's no different. I mean, American Fiction might be the overall best movie pound for pound, where everything is there. The whole thing is put together. You have Anatomy of a Fall. Please go watch 1001. Like that movie. First of all, Tiana Taylor.
Yep.
Kudos. I didn't know. I was not familiar with your game. Like, she acted her butt off, and I wish there was more buzz about that performance. And she was on the cover of Filmmaker magazine. So kudos to Gotham for doing that, but or the Gotham. But outside of that, I didn't see a whole lot from like the big industry magazines, to your point, Jordan and Nick, but like that feels every bit like a guerrilla indie film, like shoot in New York, a camera, moving, not on a crane, not on a dolly. I don't know if there were Steadicam shots or not, but it was like, oh, this feels like an indie, and it feels raw, and it feels delicious. It reminded me of the way Kids felt by Harmony Korine. It reminded me of how that movie felt. Like, so go watch 1001. It had been a movie that I kind of had pushed to the back of the line, and I'm a dum-dum because it ended up being a movie I really, really liked. Now I've watched every award nominated film, like I do every year. So to me, I wish I had to push that back, but that's that indie spirit. Like, go watch that movie if you're an indie filmmaker. I think it's a masterclass in it. But also that feel that you guys are talking about, the reason you love watching what you're watching. I think that, that's there too. So that's one. Two, Nick, I want to congratulate you. I'm proud of you, man. The growth, bro, to say that you cry.
Oh my gosh.
Like, just a few years ago, people were calling you a robot.
Yes.
People were calling you a cardboard cutout.
Because they didn't believe that I existed. That's why.
And now here you are on this well listened to podcast with Jordan Charles talking about crying at a short film, and nonetheless, a short or no less.
It is what it is.
Holy moly,
Nick! It is what it is.
Excellent.
So
you've gone, Nick. You've gone from Black Panther to Super Mario behind you. It's fantastic. Growth. It's growth. It's
exactly, bro.
I wish I could reach to this camera and give you a digital hug, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. And what's I was gonna tell you, Chris, I'm stupid, and y'all know, like, when we get on here, like, I could be stupid. And Chris said, he said dum dum, and I'm sorry, man, but I got to throw this out there. You said dum dum, and I'm like, you said dum dum. I'm the one over here looking like a chocolate lollipop. see, George said he's so stupid.
This was the sorry not sorry disclaimer from the start. I could see how some people take this
exactly. We gotta have fun.
Is your brain the gum center?
Yeah, exactly. Gotta have fun. All right. Let's move.
Hold on.
You want to do it? We'll move into
it.
I
have. Yes, I do. I have one more point I want to make.
Okay.
And this goes right back to Jordan, and we will promptly get into things we should know.
Very good.
Because I want to make sure I say this thing, because it has to do with financing for your movie. If you're on the creative side and you are working with your producers, or you are the producer, but let's say you're more of a creative than a producer, maybe, and you're going to seek financing, and you go to someone who is strictly on that business side, and don't approach that meeting with a lot of what's the right way to say it? A lot of sort of zeal about how excited you are to make your movie. That should be there, but the way a seasoned investor looks at that is like, oh, you're kind of a crazy-eyed dreamer, and I don't invest in crazy-eyed dreamers, right? Like you have to understand that to these people, you saying that your movie is the next big thing sounds like the highest of pipe dreams. It sounds preposterous. And so they're just going to nod at you and smile. And in their head, what they're thinking is, this guy or this girl is so incredibly delusional. I wish them the best. I hope they get to make their art. I'm just not going to be a part of it. So you have to understand the mindset is so different. Like, you couldn't imagine someone looking at you as a creative and saying, this guy or girl has no grip and foothold in reality. You know what I mean? So come with the business to a business person.
No, I appreciate you saying that. So it's interesting you say that, because I'm actually finding that this project, I mean, you go through different chapters in terms of like what your role is on a project. Like in the shooting phase of producer, you got to keep the whole thing going. Then the post-production phase, it's like you may have to step in almost like a supervisory role if it's your baby as a project. And after that, in the distribution side, it's like you got to find homes to have it released. And then beyond that, it's promotion, marketing, and then work on what's next. But it's interesting on this one. So we started off with a short. I made the decision to make it 39, 40 minutes to show that it could actually have its intended life on the long format, right? And then after we finished the short, I mean, we were fortunate. We got some accolades on the film festival circuit. It gained some acknowledgement. It got a Best Film Award, Best Cinematography and things, which is great. You don't do it for the awards, but then I started realizing, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that should be included in terms of like how we're presenting the project to potential, production partners or financing partners. But then when some of the dialogue has started with this now, I already find myself, the actor is kind of being subdued now. And it's almost like, what does a win-win arrangement look like for you? Or we're going to be completely open and receptive in terms of like, what are you looking for? Or what does the right project look like for you? Instead of like me heralding all the virtues of the project, because you're right. It's almost like you have to come at a different level after the film is done, if you're trying to secure funding or otherwise, so that we're almost interpreting like its promise at their level or through their lens. And it's almost, I just feel like the artist in me is almost being eviscerated in a way, because I feel like I'm almost having to speak a different language. And I'm like, I've been cognizant of that. And I'm thinking, am I doing that too much? Because we're trying to, resolve on the goal. And you want to hear your potential partners too, to see what they're realizing. But I also don't want to lose the artist either. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just piggybacking on what you're saying, Chris. But I also get your point as well.
Right. No, it's exactly right. There's a reason why the money people get called suits. And it's a reason why executives at studios get called suits. It's because they don't speak the language of the creative sometimes.
Right.
And the reason why we might call you a wild-eyed creative or dreamer on the business side or whatever is because you don't speak the language of business. You didn't come to me with who your target audience was. You didn't come to me with how you're going to spend your marketing budget or what you've earmarked for that. You didn't come to me with the details of your complete team, including the marketing and the accounting team. You didn't come to me with why this story needs to be told and why me. One of me and Nick's mentors in this game told us early on, you never want to be in a situation where they could go to a guy or gal and that person give $1 more. And then all of a sudden they're the perfect executive producer for them. It's like, you never want to be in a money race. Like if all I am is a walking check to you, I'm the wrong guy for you. I need to be more than that, because what happens is I can be usurped by a guy who's $1 wealthier than me. And that's terrible. Like, so
there's Chris, I was gonna jump in on that one and mention, because you did start the conversation there that I was gonna add to it, which is, when working with filmmakers, we always ask them about the whys. Mm-hmm. And filmmakers are really good at a couple of these, but they usually leave one of them out. So we would always ask, like, so why you? Why this story? Why now? Right? So you got that all down, right? You got, why me? Because I'm the greatest. I've been doing this all my life.
By the way, that's a terrible why me answer, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. They do it, right? Right. Wait. We can do this, right, Chris? The terrible answers. So why this story? Terrible answer. Because everybody's talking about it right now. It's the biggest thing, right? Like it's this, then like why now? Because it's in the news and they're talking about, like, it's all the same stuff. I'm the best. I need to be the one to tell this story. Everybody's talking about it. It's really popular, right? The main why that we really want to get at is, why me? So when I say why me, I'm in the position of the executive producer. That's the part that they always leave off the table. They have everything about why they need to make the film, why they're the ones who should do it, why the story is important in the zeitgeist today, and then they stop. And what they have to get right is, why that investor? And as Chris and I talk about very often, is that there's a lot of different types of return on investment, just like there's a lot of different types of currency in film. Return on investment could be that you're making a film about a subject that I'm passionate about, and I want that story to get out just as much as you do. And that's why I'm going to invest in it, because the return on investment is activism, right? The return on investment is telling a story that really hits home for me and I connect with it. Whether or not a dollar comes back, that's not my ROI. Then you have the folks that Chris mentioned that people call the suits. Those are the folks who are interested in the dollars. So if you're going to go talk to them, then you need to be prepared with a conversation about the dollars, right? So that's it. If you can really grasp that why me and understand that why me for all of the different types of investors, because you can have multiple, right?
Sure.
They don't all have to be about money or about activism, about whatever it is, or even just the art of filmmaking. But every time you approach one of them, you need to have the why me.
And I'll give you one more, guys. The investor the filmmakers love the most is the ivory tower investor. The person who just gives the money, doesn't want anything to do with the movie, doesn't know what it's about, doesn't ever come on set. Like, just they have their own ulterior motives for why they're giving the money. Oh God, filmmakers love that guy or gal. They're like, oh, this is perfect. But let me tell you as a filmmaker why you don't want an ivory tower EP. The reason why is because they don't understand the movie business. So when they call you a year and a half later and say, hey, where's my money? You're like, oh, well, it was a speculative investment. It's a risk. You signed this thing. Like, now all of a sudden you're in a legal battle with someone that's super wealthy and you're scratching by, right? Like, it's a terrible position to be in. You need people who understand what you're doing, what they're getting into, the true nature of it. What, were you able to execute? Did they have faith in your execution? Like, in the front end, it's all great because you took some money and this person isn't bothering you. They're not micromanaging you. They don't want anything from you. But in the long run, you're going to end up in one of these Dame Dash, Lee Daniels situations where Dame Dash is showing up to Lee Daniels engagements and everywhere he goes threatening to kick his ass because he doesn't get his money back. And Lee Daniels is having to like respectfully explain to Dame Dash, like, hey man, this is the movie business. Like, we don't always nut on this thing. Like, we don't always get an ROI on this. He didn't understand how movies work.
Oh, this is so great. Like, but it's good. See, these are salient points that I think this is the purpose of your podcast. There's your advocacy right here. Like, just by people tuning in going, wait, I'm actually in a similar situation. Like, you're giving education and also very valuable insight to independent filmmakers so that they can actually tread the steps properly. I think it's great. This format is great, guys, for this.
It's awesome, man. We
really appreciate that. And speaking of format, Nick, can you introduce this episode's things we should know?
I think I like that. Things we should know. Right?
It's almost like a Stuart Smalley. Did I age myself with that? SNL Stuart Smalley.
Smalley.
I'm good enough and
I'm smart enough.
I'm smart enough. Yeah.
Doggone it.
It kind of sounded like that. It was like a mixture of that and like Gumby.
You went left field on that one. So so things we should know, and of course always inspired by those folks that join us on the podcast. So I've actually got two questions. They're related, of course. The first one is hopefully a little bit of a fun one that will lead us into the second one. So the question is, what is the name of Leonardo DiCaprio's foundation for environmental activism?
Well, I will tell you right away, just knowing what I know about, and by the way, the name of the protag in Anatomy of the Fall is Sandra Hüller, if I pronounced that correctly. She's fantastic. Kudos to you, Sandra. But yeah, you definitely have an advantage on this, Jordan, because you're a big fan of Leo and a big fan of Scorsese and a big fan of Clooney. Like you're probably going to know this stuff. So I know that DiCaprio loves, like, his thing is climate change. Correct. His thing is like ice is melting where ice is not supposed to be melting. Mm-hmm. Like forests are coming down where forests aren't supposed to come down. But the name of his foundation, that's a tough one. Clooney has Not on Our Watch. Clooney has Hope for Haiti. But what does DiCaprio have?
Jordan, do you have a guess?
I was going to say, it's making me question actually a couple of things. This might be a loaded answer.
Okay.
The first is while Chris is doing his what the heck is so.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might have a couple of foundations, if I'm not mistaken. I know his production company is Appian
Oh, it's a
Way,
trick question.
and I think it might be the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation.
The Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation is a solid freaking guess.
It is.
Okay,
It
I,
is,
I don't
Chris.
want to I don't want to piggyback on it and ape your answer, Jordan. So I will guess the foundation for the wolves of Wall Street. Living endangered in Siberia.
Yeah, I see. Yes, nice guess, Chris. I appreciate that.
No, I don't.
And,
I don't have a. I don't have a. I don't have a name.
yeah, I get it. I get it.
Actors for
Yeah.
Climate Change.
Yeah,
Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio.
that's excellent. And I have to say that this ended as I thought it would with Jordan getting it correct. It is the Leonardo DiCaprio Foundation.
Well done, sir. Well done, sir.
I was really pulling for the Wolves, though, Chris.
Yeah, right.
That was great. Shout out to Leo. He's doing great work. He's
Yeah,
solid
he
for that.
is. He is. So I'll add the second question to this one. Again, this one might be something that Jordan, but through his work, Leo DiCaprio, because we're tight like that, right? I can call him Leo.
Yep.
It's like me and my boy John Daniels.
Mhm.
We're really good friends.
Mhm.
Like yeah. Everybody else calls him Jack. He's
Mhm.
John to me.
John. Mhm.
So now the question is this: he has produced 2 documentaries.
Mm.
Do you know the names of the 2 documentaries that Leonardo DiCaprio has produced?
Boy. Produced makes it so tough, right? Like,
Yeah, because you don't think about them that way.
mhm.
Like we know, and here's the thing, guys. As you're thinking about it, one of the things or the reason that I brought this up is because everybody knows Leonardo DiCaprio. Like you can't not, right? I think maybe 60% of the people understand that he is also an activist in this way: climate change, environment, sustainability, right? So let's say 60%. But you don't know the documentary films that he's produced. And it's very interesting for someone to have that level of celebrity, right?
Can we get a range of years these documentaries came out in, please?
Sure. I'll actually give you the 2 years.
This is like a lifeline, Jordan.
The actual years of both, right? So one of them is 2007 and the other one was 2016.
Okay, so does that surprise you, Jordans? Because we were thinking last 2 or 3 years, because we're starting to see this influx of sort of like really high-end actors, known actors producing more. So Margot Robbie, for instance, not only I think was a producer on Barbie, but also on Saltburn. And then you had Emma Stone with Poor Things. And the year before that, she did, Easy A or something like that. I can't remember. But
right.
if that's correct, I might need to be
in all narratives, though, right?
Yeah.
These are documentaries that
Mhm.
supported his work that he's doing with his
But this is way back. This is 2007. This is like Basketball
2007.
Diaries or something.
Yep, and
Well,
2016.
that was before that. That was way before that. Was like Basketball Diaries was like mid-90s or something, actually, I think. Right? When did Basketball Diaries come out?
That was way back. Yeah, really way back. Yeah.
But 2007, what would have come out then that would have been, because in 2007, you wouldn't have had a movie that, like, it would have been a standalone doc in my mind, right, Jordan? Like
Yeah,
it wouldn't have
I
been a
almost
big
kinda wanna
climate
say-
change doc.
Yeah, I almost want to say An Inconvenient Truth if he got involved with that, but I don't think.
I was thinking of that too. But
Yeah,
was Inconvenient Truth at like Y2K or something, like around that time, or when did it come out?
Yeah,
I don't
it
know.
might have been earlier. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to, and you know what's funny? I'm actually visualizing.
Don't.
I don't remember the title of the one, but I remember the polar ice sheets. That's why I'm like, I can't answer this question, Nick. I feel terrible.
Is one of them like the March of the Penguins?
No, it is not.
No.
So I will just let you know, right?
Okay.
So the one that was done in
Otherwise, we'll be here all day.
2000, exactly 2007 is The 11th Hour.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
See, he knew. And then 2016 is Before the Flood.
Before the flood. Yeah.
Okay, I don't. So Jordan, it sounds like you knew the 11 Hours. I don't know that one. I would have never guessed it, but I knew Before the Flood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a great things we should know. Those are all three of those, Nick, are things we should know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I'm glad
Like on
that
so
I
many
was
levels,
able
we
to
need to know
provide-
all those things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me
And I think
qualify
it's
this
important.
actually, Nick. Yeah, I wanted to
Yep.
just say something about that. Even though we got the wrong answer, I think everyone listening or watching should definitely go see those two productions because it's more important that people watch them than us forgetting them.
There you go. You got it 100%. That's perfect. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the thing is that there's so much goodness that's happening outside of the celebrity. There are folks that are using their platforms to create things like this, and it is important that we go out and support those things, that we watch these films, especially those that can help us to understand what we can do to help this planet that we all live on.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, I will say, I don't know. I mean, we all have individual goals and collective goals, but I mean, if I can elevate my stature as an artist, like over time and be associated with the right, collaborative teams, I just want to use the art to propel forward a lot of the platforms on the planetary environmental side. I would love to become like a UN ambassador. There's a lot of things that if we're not devoted to shifting a lot of the problems that are occurring right now and perhaps even becoming more grave, I'm of the school of thought. I believe the science. I think that we're in trouble. Some people say, no, the earth will self-correct and all these things. I think it's up to human beings to do our part.
But okay, the melting and the storms and the floods are the self-correcting. The volcanoes that are happening at random times, the tsunamis, that is the self-correcting. We don't want to be a part of that. Right.
Right.
Like I took a 23andMe, my whole family did. We were early adopters on that. Right. And it says that my lineage on my father's side is from a place called Doggerland, which used to be north of the United Kingdom. And look, for anybody that doesn't know, that hasn't listened to this podcast, my mom is black, my dad is German. Okay. So here's the deal. Doggerland is underwater. It's underwater. It doesn't exist anymore. And if the waters receded, Doggerland would come back. We'd find all this stuff. We'd find a lost civilization, basically. Like that's what everybody migrated south as the as the water rose. And what I've heard people say in science is like people don't understand that you're not measuring change of water temperature by degrees as much as by percentage. And a 2% change plus or minus has catastrophic results. So that's, to your point, Jordan, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with once like 2 degrees warmer, Florida's underwater, basically. Have the middle of California's underwater. And then 2 degrees colder, you have the expansion of the poles. Like water can freeze in the in places where water is really, really cold. So it's not that we have this like giant field of possibilities to dance around in and like, oh, it'll self-correct, or this doesn't matter. It's very narrow. Like the balance of our world being a place where we can inhabit it safely is narrow. It's a 4-degree total space, basically, or a 4% total space, plus or minus 2, either way. So anyway,
Chris, I just wanted to add to that. Chris mentioned, the idea of the this is how the planet is self-correcting, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing that it made me think of was The Matrix. And if you remember The Matrix, there was a part in there where Mr. Anderson was speaking, and he said something about what humans are. And he said, you're a virus. You spread, right? Remember that, right?
I disagree with Mr. Anderson.
I understand that, but I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm thinking like, well, how does the body deal with a virus, right? it sends these white blood cells to
Well, they
kill
gotta
the
be white.
virus. Why are you stupid? So it sends
Oh boy.
exactly. So it sends the white blood cells after the virus, and that's back to Chris's point. Is like the Earth is sending something after the virus.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It's sending floods. It's sending tornadoes. It's sending lava after the virus. It says something is bothering me. I need to get rid of that thing that is killing me. So it's funny you just said that. I was like,
exactly.
I wonder if the Earth is coming after us, man. Like it's
cause and effect, man.
I'll tell you guys an interesting anecdote in light of what you're saying there, Nick, too. So I remember when I was mentioning my dad did gardening growing up, I remember like very early on. So he would do everything so precise, like everything organic, till the land. We grew up in Canada, so the snowfall was still there. He'd plant the garlic, and then he would make sure to get the topsoil from the farm, get the manure to help cultivate the soil to really enrich with all the nutrients and everything. And then he would do everything. Everything was so aligned, like where to step and then what leaves to trim. You'd spend like 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and then it would rain. And then the rain would come down and it's acid rain. And then he would see after the acid rain, then that would bring in like certain insects that were almost like non-native to like what you would expect to be on the vet. And he'd be like, I can't understand. He goes, I'm doing all this to cultivate a garden. And then whatever the world is doing outside of me, it's doing this. So it's almost like, I'm like, Dad, I'm surprised that you're not shouting at neighbors or down the street going, whatever you're doing, you got to stop it. But I think the planet feels like that as well sometimes. I mean, if we can personify it. And it's going to take such a concentrated effort. It's so funny, people that recognize these things, even some of the things you were saying, Chris, like when you feel it so presciently and then others don't, like it's almost, you have to almost contain yourself and say, okay, that means you just have to start leading by example and then try to rally around as much support as you can and then build from there grassroots, right? What do they say? It's always like the small minority of people that begin the surge to change the world. And I don't know what we need. Change, alter, fix, rescue, repair. It's going to take an onslaught of effort.
Yeah, and I think despite what the news might tell you, there are millions and millions, if not a billion people that are all trying their best to do their best. There isn't any technologist that I've read or know about that isn't looking at climate change, not only as the next big, great investment opportunity, but a way to improve the world, continue the world, help humanity in a meaningful way. And so if the obstacle is always just money, that means that, we can definitely foster change. What happens is, how do you, if you've become rich off something that turns out to be really bad for you, what will it take, as you said earlier, Jordan, to create a win-win, like with a person who's not really interested in your agenda? I mean, so we did that with the tobacco industry, and we gave them the time to get into smoking alternatives, right? And so that they could survive. But if you just kill them right away, then they resist and do all sorts of nefarious things to get in the way of progress. The auto industry, think about how many people and investors, funds, companies, we're not only using government subsidies to survive, but also shorting, all the people who are making electric vehicles, right? Because they don't want to be put out of business, period, point blank. And so they don't want that money. And what's tied to that money? Employees, people's houses, their lives, what they finance. So these things do take time, because what we've built up, all around us. There are cities that don't have telephone poles. There are cities that don't have traffic lights because they know roundabouts are more efficient. But you can't do that around the world all at once, because we built up this whole big thing around the idea that turned out to be not as good. So we just have to keep fighting the good fight. Speaking of fighting the good fight, though, we've gone this far in the conversation. I've loved this chat, by the way, guys.
Yeah.
And we don't know the plot, Jordan, of your film, the short or the feature of Brothers in Arms. So can you break down like what this movie is about, why you wanted to make it, why you want to make it so bad, and what it means to you? Is it personal? Is it completely fictional? What's going on with this movie?
Wait, can I wait before you get into that, Jordan? In the spirit of this wonderful conversation and the joy that we're having, I wanted to offer what I thought the movie was about when I first heard it. I thought it was about me. And you're like, wait, I know you're like, wait, what? Jordan's like, what do you mean? How could it be about you? I mean, I thought about Brothers in Arms. You know?
Yes. Jordan's talking about acid rain. You're talking about chocolate rain.
Yeah, exactly. Chocolate rain.
You know what's crazy about chocolate rain is he was writing about acid rain. It's very meta.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. It is. All right. I digress. Yeah. My bad. All right, Jordan, let us really know what Brothers in Arms is about.
Sure. I appreciate it. So I guess the inception, I mean, it never starts with the story. I think it always starts with what inspires the project or the story, right? So, I mean, in my personal family history, I mean, your upbringing is completely influenced by your influences. And World War II was a big one in our family. I mean, both mom and dad side from Europe. And I mean, Italy's inclusion in the war, I mean, when they aligned with Germany and then they decided to forsake Germany, and then what ended up happening on Italian soil, I mean, it's just complete devastation. It's so sad. Like we never learn the lessons of the past, or maybe war becomes this like unnecessary monster, right? That it just destabilizes lives. I mean, we're seeing the Mideast now and everything. It's just the incessant thing as human beings that we have inside of us to have conflict. But my grandfather, one of them actually disposed bombs, just kind of like the Hurt Locker. And a lot of people in
Great film.
in the unit died when he was doing that for the military. So then he kind of left Italy. His wife pulled him out of there and said, look, you can't do this anymore. You're going to get blown up. It's a very, very hard, challenging job. So he ended up going to Brazil, and then he ended up in Canada. And then he's like, I got to bring the family over. And then family eventually gets there. My other side, grandfather becomes a POW in Africa, ends up in Argentina, ends up not going back to Italy. So division and separation in our family were huge themes growing up, in terms of we have cousins on this side of the world and that side, and how come this person didn't go back home, and why'd they stay there, and why'd that person follow them? There was a lot of this, and I'm sure a lot of families go through this. I mean, the migrant crisis that's going on right now, this stuff never ends. So I think there were things that I had to get out of me from an artistic standpoint, in terms of, I guess, growing through that experience, because we'd sometimes have cousins that come in and it's like, wow, I'm supposed to be close to this person. I don't even know them. Like, I know nothing about their life, and I hear all the heritage stories. So I've always been influenced by real seminal, cathartic, gritty cinema, like Michael Mann's Heat or Martin Scorsese's films, The Departed. I love films like this. And I wanted to kind of explore the themes in the film. The idea that came to mind that was resonant with me, these two brothers, where if I posited the fact that they were separated at a young age due to tragic circumstances, and in the story, I don't want to kind of give too much away, but a family tragedy ends up happening, and then they end up growing up with disparate lives. One gets raised on the straight and narrow, and it's kind of an exploration of nature versus nurture as well. And then he becomes this groom for promotion LAPD police lieutenant. And the other brother gets taken in by the tentacles of their father, who's been living a life of organized crime. And the film picks up 25 years later. These two boys on opposite sides of the law, they're on a collision course to collide. And the film explores, what is the meaning of family, and can family be redeemed after all that distance and separation? So I play the brother that was raised on the straight and narrow in the film. And I found that was deeply helpful for me too, in terms of exploring that reservoir of feelings that I had growing up. It's a deeply personal project from that standpoint, but also we were really trying to hearken and herald a lot of the films that I mentioned, the seminally sought films that everyone kind of feels like they almost take on a cult following. Like, this is like a saga. And I wanted to make sure from an independent filmmaking standpoint that all the supporting characters were also explored in terms of what their intentions and priorities and motives and agendas are. So we get to really explore that in the feature film screenplay. So with the 40-minute short, I'm just hoping that it kind of gives some semblance of how heavy the themes are and for people to take something away. And after people watch the short, it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. A lot of people have kind of reacted like, no, wait, that, like, what happens now? Like, I want to see. And we kind of did that deliberately to kind of really foster interest in being able to tell the entire story.
Yeah, I got it. I appreciate that very much. It made me think of my own life a little bit. I mean, my grandfather was on my dad's side again, was a French mercenary, and
Oh, wow.
likely spent a good amount of his time trying to colonize Northern Africa for France.
Look
Matter
at
of fact,
that.
the one picture I have of this man, who I never met in person, but the picture I have of him was him in Algeria. So he was likely there doing that, and probably unbeknownst to him, he ends up with a black grandchild, and
Unreal.
life is cyclical and scientific like that, right? So
Yeah.
the things you sow, they just kind of come back around in their own unique way. I think it reminds me of that line that Andre 3000 had on Donda, where he's like. I don't know if I believe in, basically what he's expressing is, I don't know if I believe in heaven or hell or God, because I don't get to talk to my mother who's passed away. And then he reconsiders and thought, well, maybe it comes in a different form. Maybe it's the blade of grass sticking in my back when I'm laying down to tell me to keep moving,
Wow.
or to get up and
Right.
roam.
Get up.
Right. So, he's unbelievable. But these things are all explored, it feels like, in your film, right?
Yeah,
The
no question. I
the
appreciate you
butterfly
sharing that.
effect of that.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting story as well. I wonder if there's even a way, Chris, for you to explore that either in a filmmaking guise or in a literary guise. That's a very unique story that you describe. And I think there's a lot of people, you guys do a great job of thought share, I think, on the podcast, in my opinion. But
Thank you.
like, I think it's resonant with a lot of people when they listen to that because, guys, I mean, I think half the world, I mean, it derives from immigrants. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
always in this state of transition. And within 2 generations, if you explore deep enough your own family heritage, you're going to find commonality in stories like this. I mean, we all don't come from the same place, and we're all in this position of movement. And I mean, it creates all these disparities, and you kind of have to brave through those things. Like, that also affects the financial realities of family. It affects like your closeness and how you feel about the people that are connected to you by blood.
Yeah.
I think it also affects your worldview, how maybe you even how you, I guess, perceive like other conflicts on the other side of the world. You say, okay, well, that doesn't involve me. But then if you look back deep enough, maybe your heritage is actually shared with some of the people that are involved in those conflicts. So I don't know. I think there's a sense of loyalty to your lineage that I think that has to be explored somehow as an artist. That's always
Yeah.
been important to me. I don't know if that you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, well, I like that whole. I mean, that whole background that you just gave was definitely an impassioned one.
Yes.
But one of the experiences. So I'm gonna, not having seen, of course, the short that you've created, and not having envisioned yet the feature film that you're going to hopefully one day create as well. One of the things that Chris and I have witnessed is that this type of passion exists in many filmmakers, and there's one mistake that they make. They build this passion into the story so deeply that no one can see it. As in, they understand that it's there because they made it, but they also try to make something that, let's say, might be more commercially successful. And everything is now in potentially in innuendo or metaphor, but it's stuff that the filmmaker understands. Like, well, that's why I did that. Like, I did it like this because this is what it meant to me. But you covered it up in so much other stuff that now, because to the point you made earlier, Jordan, about, you make this thing and people don't see it and they don't understand. And it's maybe because you hid it from them. And that's one thing that I know we've experienced that before, where it's like, I saw what you were trying to do. And now that I'm sitting with you and we're going through this film step by step by step, maybe I can see what you're trying to do. But you don't get that relationship with a distributor or another financier where you're going to sit down with them step by step and go through it.
I mean, you hope
it
you
has
will,
to
but...
be exactly. It has to be clear and apparent when they see the film that was truly the message that you were trying to get out.
Well, the
But
big
Chris,
point there, Nick, is that if you do hide all the passion in metaphor and in nuance and in innuendo, then you miss the emotional notes that are required to make someone attach themselves to a film, and that's the big deal. So it's not that they don't get it or whatever. It's just like I'm trying to connect here to this, and you're not letting me. There's 100 indie films that do it, but there's no reason to bring them up. I think the most classic example that everybody knows that's recent is Tenet. Let's just, I love Nolan, but people have a hard time with Tenet because it is too wrapped up within itself for you to get everything about it, because it was already a difficult concept to understand. Not this idea of not things going backwards. It's not a reverse button. It's something else. And then so first you have to wrap your head around that. Then all the other things tucked in. I can't tell you how many people have been like that. I have no idea what was happening in the final act of the film where they're in the war, where some soldiers are going backwards and some are going forwards, and the release time had to be perfect. And this is the reason I bring up Tenet. One, everybody knows it. That's why I brought it up. But the other reason why is because exactly what Nick said is so spot on. If you buy the Tenet Blu-ray, and I think you should buy the Blu-ray. I do. It's great. It's actually a great Blu-ray. The extras in it are tremendous. If you open the Blu-ray and pop in the extras discs, I think there's 2 or 3 of them, you'll get the movie perfectly.
Right.
You're like, oh my God. You did. And then you have even more adoration and respect for Nolan. You're like, and the cinematographer, I forget his name, but it's like, oh my God, you're a genius. I can't believe you, like, just everybody just Google, I think it's Rotas, Rotas. And the whole thing will come up. He wrote the whole movie based on this thing that randomly shows up all around the world that no one can explain. That's in Latin. And it's one of these things where it spells the same thing forward as it does backwards all the way around. And it's 5 words in a row. Forget what that's called, Nick. Not a palindrome. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it's amazing. It's amazing what you learn. But you have to sit down and do all the explanation over the span of 2 or 3 extra discs. And now finally you get the movie.
And independent filmmakers
and we don't have that luxury. Yeah.
That's it. So that would be the thing that I would say. Just make sure you don't bury it too much in sometimes it's just the art. You thought it was a more creative way of saying something, but you buried it because you know what it is. In your heart of hearts, All
right. I'm not going to name this filmmaker, Nick. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I got to do it. I got to just say this one. Tenet did it in an artful way. Here's what you don't do. We watched a film at a film festival. This was years ago, where a person just stumbled around on a railroad track for 8 minutes. Sorry, go ahead, Nick. And they're calling, and the filmmaker wants to call the audience dumb.
Right, exactly.
So you guys just aren't elevated.
Yeah, you just don't get it. Yeah, so that's my point.
Come on,
that's it. Is just make sure that
nothing happened. The guy walked on some railroad tracks. Quit
right. Exactly. You just got to make sure that the passion that you have, right, the core of what the story is clear and apparent without you having to be there. That's it.
But I want to say these are great points you guys are bringing up. By the way, this is probably going to help a lot of people as well. But I think one way that you can insulate from some of the negative effects of that, because then it doesn't get interpreted properly, I think you have to invite the collaboration of your creative partners. Where, my co-director on this, Ibrahim Nada, and my cinematographer Aaron Alps, I remember early on in the process, I said, guys, here's what the purpose is. Here's what our motivations are, what we're going to try to explore. And then right away, it's open-ended. What do you think? What are you seeing? How do you think we need to? And even on set, there were things that were imbued or added, or we took tangents, or And I think their added inclusion, if I took more of like a stiff approach where it's like, you know what? No, I got to stick to the vision. The film actually would not have been executed, I believe, like as potently as like it were with their inclusion. And it's that was a very, very good lesson for me as well, because you have to be close to the material because you have to drive it forward, but you can't be too close, like you said, to where it's actually there's execution traces that they can't be readily defined. This is very important. I'm really glad you guys made that point.
Yeah, I think it's great. Shout out to Ali Asala and Sarah De La Haya, who run the 48 here where I'm at in Nashville. You know, they brought up, I think it was this year or last year, but they brought up well, it was last year, but I think I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago, but they brought up all the filmmakers that made 48s. And if you're not familiar with the 48, it's a film festival where, like, on the fly, they give you the genre, the subgenre, characters that have to be in there, lines that have to be in there, props that have to be in there. You have to write something in basically 10 hours and shoot it all in 48 hours, edit, post, everything. It's such a challenge, right? So they brought up the filmmakers and said, what's one thing you learned from this process? And I want to say 11 out of the 15 directors that were up there that were part of that Q&A said, be more collaborative.
Look at that.
Wish I'd listened to my team more.
Yeah, it's unreal. Yeah, it's unreal. But it's true though. Like in film, in my opinion, it is the utmost collaborative. I'm trying to think. I mean, I've talked to people that have done concerts for some of the larger, high-profile acts, like the Taylor Swifts of the world, the U2s, and I mean those are like 500 to 1,000 person productions. I mean, if you want collab, you got to see some of the camera work in that. It's almost like I just have to focus on my job, because if I'm 2 feet to the right or left, it's going to discombobulate the entire, like these things, you know, it's funny, the naked eye, the viewer that doesn't maybe have on-hand experience of what goes into productions and the arts, I don't think they would ever know the things perhaps that you guys are bringing up right now. It's great. It's great that you're heralding them.
Well, it's our awesome pleasure. It's kind of what we're here to do. And Nick, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that this is kind of like activism and in a podcast, because it's not that I don't know it, but a wise man once told me that people don't need to be told, they need to be reminded. And so I just need to be reminded, oh yeah, this is activism. This is helpful, hopefully, to those listening. So if it was helpful, let us know, drop us a line, engage with it, tell a friend, all that good stuff. This has been a blast, guys. I've really truly enjoyed it. It's been incredible. Jordan, before we let you go, how can everybody listening sort of follow you, see some of your work, contribute, support you in your work and your activism?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you guys for everything today. It's always great to discourse with, fellow independent filmmakers. It's fantastic. For our project, www.watchbrothersinarms.com. That's got all the latest news on the film, the press, different, developments with regard to our feature financing push that we're on right now. Our film is going to be, it's actually being exhibited at European Film Market in Berlin on February 21st in the afternoon at the main cinema there in Berlin. So we're looking forward to that. We've been reaching out to a lot of people in industry for it. My acting handles, www.actorjordancharles.com. That's got a lot of my footage and recent work. And Instagram at actorjordancharles as well. Though I'm not very active on social media, we try to posit some latest news on that as well. Appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. So you heard it from the man himself. Go to Actor Jordan Charles on social. Go to actorjordancharles.com on the internet to follow him. Do support his film at www.watchbrothersinarms.com. I cannot wait to Brothers in Arms, Nick. I thought the movie was about hugging young Black children. So I just but this is why I'm so bad at things we should know.
I'll change the one sheet.
You're right. Yeah, that'd be great. We appreciate that. Yeah. But no, in all seriousness, do support this film. I cannot wait to see what comes of this, and just to follow the journey. And usually after these conversations, what me and Nick always say is we just made a new friend for life. So I hope that's the case. I hope you feel the same, Jordan. And for those listening that don't already know, you can listen to this podcast, support this podcast, and support what we're doing here on the Make It podcast in a few very simple ways. Anywhere you go online, just type in the Make It podcast and all of our links will come up. But if you want to be specific, on YouTube, just type in the Make It podcast, will come up. On Instagram and on X, _Make It podcast, and we'll be right there. Facebook, the Make It podcast, we will come right up. Soon to be back on TikTok pretty soon. We'll let you know when that happens. And be sure to subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter. It's just a passion project for the team here. We're a little team that we put it together every 2 weeks. And it's not just compiling a bunch of stories from around the world of film. We just handpick these things, curate. We give offer codes. We give things from inside industry that you can't find that are part of associations and unions and clubs and things like that. So we just try to make it fun and something that's really, truly useful to you. So you can subscribe to that. It's free at www.bonsai.film, FILM/subscribe, and put your email in there, and that'll be that. Join the club, join a bunch of creatives and film creatives like yourself in that newsletter. So with that, I should mention, Nick, about how to find you, because you have this, not only your email, nick@bonsai.film, but you have this new Reddit. Can you tell people about your Reddit situation and how you're doing with that and how many questions you're getting and answering?
Yeah, man, said the Reddit situation, like I'm in trouble. I'm like, what am I? But yeah, it's really easy. It's just Nicholas Bugs on Reddit. That's it. Just at Nicholas Bugs, keeping it simple so people can connect with me. But I'm out there asking questions, man. I'm trying to answer questions that come up as well. Just basically being part of that online social community around filmmaking. So it's been great. There's so many great questions that are being asked out there. So much great discussion out there on Reddit as well. So I'm just happy to be out there doing it. So with that, I'll say that I'm very excited to see the film. About what is it again, Chris? It's Underground Negro Arm Wrestling League.
This is good. This thing is evolving. Wow.
You gotta go watch Brothers in Arms, okay?
Brothers in Arms by the one and only Jordan Charles. And look, it's by the way,
no, this was by Jordan Peele, I think.
By Jordan, that one's by Jordan Peele. The other
right.
the real one's by Jordan Charles.
The real one's by Jordan Charles, right?
Nick, we need to bring Reddit questions to the podcast.
We will.
We need to create a segment,
I got them ready. Yep.
Mailbag segment to answer these questions that we're answering on Reddit all the time.
I got them ready.
Now you answer them. I'm the guy who replies. I'm on there too, but I just reply with eggplant emojis and poop emojis.
Yeah, I know. I gotta just downvote that.
You're actually answering, because I want to bring these questions to the podcast for everybody that's not on Reddit, so they get those answered. Yep. And then if you want to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter. You can just search for my name, Chris Barkley, and I will show right up. I answer, and so does Nick, 100% of these messages. And so with that, Nick, can you leave us with the credo?
After yet another pregnant pause, I shall. So to our friends, our fans, our fellow filmmakers, and of course our family out there, we always say, be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. Jordan, talk to you soon. Nick?
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, brother. We appreciate you too, man.
This is the blast.
All right, guys.
Talk soon, guys.
Yep. Later.
Peace.